Welcome to Mark My Words, a podcast that not only aims to inspire and teach the listener about entrepreneurship, it also aims to give my guests an opportunity to talk about their unique journey in entrepreneurship and life. So join me and my guests as we meet at the crossroads on Mark My Words. So if you're like me and you're very resourceful, independent, and maybe the idea, and I'm not saying this to take my guess's perspective, this is only my perspective, still kind of unsure about doing things like hiring a staff and going through that whole process. And you really want to just take on your business, and whether it's a podcast or content creation, or if it's just something completely different from that. If you want to be a little more independent, I think today's guest is going to be somebody really good for you to listen to. She has a business where she wants to show you how you how you can create passive income, and she wants to help content creators, among many other people, hopefully in walks of life, to do that. And she is Tina Lopez, of CEO of Lopez Holdings. And Tina, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Well, I was doing some research literally right up to the minute that I connected with you on this call. And I actually read a post that you just posted. And I think you know what I'm talking about. I want to get into that at some point because that was so well written. I just happened to come across it. I swear I'm not like, what's Tina doing? No, I just literally, I'm like, okay, I got to prepare for this interview, not that I haven't been, but it's like last minute, what do I need to do? And I thought what you had to say there was great. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I like to start off. So the thing that inspired me to do this show was not only my path in life and career, but I'm curious to know about other people's paths and the fork in the road or forks, however many there might be. I feel like I have several. I love to go all the way back and just kind of kick off and ask what exactly. So you're running your own business on the internet, probably something you didn't envision a few years back when you were younger. What were you thinking about when you looked into the future, when you were growing up and you were majoring, I think, in business in college? And what
Yeah.
exactly did you have in mind?
Yeah, so I always make this joke with my friends and family that like when I came out of the womb, I said, "Oh, I want to make money." But jokes aside, I have always been entrepreneurial at heart. So just for context, my dad came here from Guatemala literally with nothing, and so he was the first one to graduate from college, and he was also the first one to really start his own business. And so he actually started the business when I was born and had a whole separate conversation with my mom about it. But anyways, that entrepreneurship spirit definitely comes from my dad, but the creative side definitely comes from my mom. So my mom has always told me at a young age to think outside the box. And so I'm someone who, again, likes to think outside the box, mostly because I've been prompted to at such a young age. But if you were to ask me what was my first dream was to be a princess. My second dream was to be a chef, which is very ironic because I don't like to cook at at this age, but I do like to eat. But no, seriously, so when it came to entrepreneurship, The first business that I ever had was actually a henna business. So if you're familiar with like Indian weddings and things like that, henna is a form of body art design, right? And so that was actually very successful. I did that when I was, middle school all the way to high school and a little bit of college. And that was actually very well because we did, brides, festivals. We did an event at Google. And so, that was a really good run while it happened. And when I got into college, I thought that, I really have a passion for entrepreneurship. I really wanted to help people. And so originally I thought I wanted to go into coaching, which I did. I went into coaching as a business coach because I learned a lot of strategy in terms of marketing throughout the years that I knew how to get clients, I knew how to sign clients, and I wanted to teach specifically life coaches how to do that as well because I'm very big in the coaching space in terms of I have a big belief in how it can really change your lives, right? And so I did that for about 2 years, actually, and that went really well. However, one of the things that I faced a lot, and I think not a lot of people talk about this, is actually burnout. So, although I really love, coaching, and sometimes I miss it, now I don't do coaching, but I really love the aspect of being able to help people with their business and have wins, right? So an example is one of my clients, she went from $50 for a group coaching program all the way to charging $3,000 for a coaching program and actually signing clients, and that was life-changing money for her, right? And so to see that growth in my clients and seeing that was really great and beneficial, but it was also very tiring and exhausting in terms of my capacity and my bandwidth, right? So you know, when you think about a coaching business, you kind of have two parts. You have sales calls where you're actually signing clients, and then you have, coaching clients where you're actually doing the fulfillment, and then you're doing everything else in terms of marketing and customer support and all those things. And I got to a point where I was super burned out and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I call it my dark day of burnout, but like it was just really like back to back. I think burnout has a way of bleeding into other parts of your lives. And so I had back-to-back sales calls and all of them said no. I was like 20 plus sales calls. And I was like, I know how to do sales. Like this is not me. Like there's something deeper here, right? And so I got on a call with my coach at the time and she said, like, Tina, I think you're burnt out. And I was like, huh, I think you're right. And so I actually within, a weekend, I decided, hey, told my audience I'm not taking on new clients. I'm finishing out the contracts that I have right now, but we're just going to go on a little bit of a, sabbatical, right? And so I took 4 months off and I really kind of took that time to identify like what is it that Tina wants? Like what type of business do I want? And there's a lot of privilege in being able to take that time off because, being able to take time off and still, have all your living expenses covered is a very big win, right? And so I took that time very seriously from the perspective of like, okay, what do I like to do? Well, I love being able to serve people at scale in the sense of like coaching is great because you get to see that in-depth growth, but you can only, there's a maximum in terms of how many people you can serve, right? And so I was thinking to myself, well, like, well, I like helping people. I like sharing knowledge. I like talking about these new strategies in business and what's working, what's not working. Like, how can I reach millions of people with, as with no time on my calendar? And so that's where I kind of stumbled onto content creation via my blog on Medium, where I was like, you know what, this is actually pretty good. And it's still delivering the mission of being able to help people through online business. I like to say I have two missions in life. One, teach people how to have generational wealth through business, and B, to teach you how to have the time in life to actually enjoy that wealth. And so that's when I landed on content creation. And I told myself, if we're going to do this business, there's kind of three non-negotiables. One of them is it needs to be only passive income. The second one is it needs to have no sales calls. Don't like sales calls, don't want to do them. And the last thing is that I can't be a bottleneck in my business, right? And so what that means is that I don't want to manage a team. I don't want to, you know, have my presence be a requirement in order for my business to thrive. And I can say, like, it took me 2 years to build this business, and we're gonna get into it, but that is kind of the rough synopsis of my story so far.
So, first of all, that was great summary. Secondly, you were able to take time off as I had to mute myself to get a drink. So, one lesson to pass on, don't have anything with nuts before you do talking because it might get in your throat. So, I had my throat completely cleared. So, putting that aside, hopefully, I'm good now. You took 4 months off for
Mhm.
yourself. And did you just not have to worry about finances at all? Did you have like a savings?
Yeah, so I like this methodology. It's called the profit first methodology. I think if you have a business, everybody should definitely look into it. It's basically, you know, it's allowing you to teach you a strategy on how to save money, but also actually profit from your business from the beginning. I'm not going to go into it because I'm not an expert, but I just read the book and I highly recommend people read the book. So that was a combination of savings in terms of I took, that time away from my business, but I also had contracts that were still paying me, right? So at that point, like I was not taking on any new clients, but I did have like the monthly retainers of the current contracts that I was serving. So I did essentially still serve my clients and finish out those contracts because those were my commitments, but I didn't take on any new clients from that point on. So that was kind of the strategy I'll say.
No, then that's a great strategy. I mean, I know for me, I could maybe take like a week or two off and then I'd be like, okay, I need money. So
Mm.
that's really great that you were able to back away a little bit and take some time. And I think just the way that you're thinking about yourself just as far as going back to originally, you're like, okay, I got this part from my dad, this part from my mom, and I know I think about myself in the same way because the fact that
Mhm.
I'm doing this is my mom, and I don't offhand really even know what I'm doing that would be like my dad, but I know that he would never do this. But but what, speaking of your dad, with him being an entrepreneur and him being such an influence, what did you learn from him along the way in your journey?
Yeah, so I learned a couple things from him, both good and bad. And I think it's important to see both sides, right? And I want to disclaimer this is like, I love my father. There's no discredit to him whatsoever. But, you know, the good things I learned from him is grit, right? But also, how do I say this? But in a way where it's like, it's not just grit, but it's also where like you are working to build something for your family, right? And that kind of came in full circle when I actually had a launch. It was a failed launch, but I realized that it was Black Friday. First of all, like if you ever have an offer, do not do not try to do a launch during Black Friday because it's a lot, it's very stressful and there's a lot more pieces to it. But anyways, like I learned my lesson and what happened during that time was I actually on Thanksgiving, I was staying up probably till 4 in the morning trying to figure out how to create a damn sales page. Like it was really last minute. It was just not a good decision. But I got into an argument with my family in terms of like, why are you working and why are you doing this? And then I kept saying like, I'm working on my business so that I could do XYZ, right? And after the launch happened and it was a complete failure, like I kind of had this moment where I was talking to my dad and I realized I was like, you know what? I get it now, right? And what I mean by that is, growing up, like he wasn't all like he was part of my life, but like he come to every, special event that happened in my life? No, because he was building a business. And I think there's a very real, you know, time and hustle it takes to build that business. And so his always thing was like, I'm working. And so as a child, like I didn't understand like, okay, why is work more important than me, right? And I'm not saying it is, but I understood finally when I had that experience, I was like, oh, like I'm working because I want to provide a future for my family. right? And so it wasn't until like I had that experience where I said no to my family that I finally understood maybe the experience that my dad had in terms of, him saying no to me growing up. And again, like I had a great childhood. He was an amazing father. He is still an amazing father. But I think what that taught me was I still needed to choose to not be in a situation like that going forward. And what I mean by that is like I after that experience, I never want to say no to my family if I have an option or if I have a business going on. Like I need to make sure that business comes second to my family, and that means I need to build the systems, the income, the passiveness in order for me to say yes to my family and say no to my business. And I think a lot of people, especially in the entrepreneurship space, they're like, "Oh, hustle, hustle, hustle." For me, I'm like, no, like I want to do less. My goal in life is not to do more. My goal in life is to do less, but still have the impact so it can do more, if that makes sense. But yeah,
No,
my dad has been very instrumental.
that makes total sense. And I mean, for me, I know last year I basically took the whole year off from doing this podcast. So I was picking up some good momentum. We talked before we started about the amazing Podmatch site, which is how we wound up with this episode today. And just it was really starting to go well, getting tons and tons of inquiries, really all through 2023. But you talk about burnout. I was working two jobs, one of which I was really for a while working probably well over 12 hours until the second job came into play. I really had to cut back because the new job was amazing. I wanted to make sure that worked out. But I had to make some choices because you talk about family, people in your life. I had to consider that. So many things had to be considered. There just wasn't enough time for it all. So I had to put this show on the back burner for a little while. And after the other job, the one that was just kind of like a freelance job, I basically was like, okay, I need some time. I'm completely burned out from that experience because I did pretty good money working the freelance job, but it was like a terrible experience. And, I'll talk about that another time. But I really just needed the time. And once I was ready, I had something come up personally. I had to put it off for a few more months. But finally now it's like I'm in a real good space and I'm ready and my whole heart is into it. And I'm still getting tons of inquiries for the podcast. That hasn't stopped. I've been getting really great guests, including you, and it you can afford to take that time. I mean, unless money is a factor, you can afford to back away. And
Mm,
luckily, I still have like a regular full time job, which I kind of not so much want to talk about that, but I'm hoping to eventually talk about how you're using automation for your business and to help others because I need to learn a thing or two. I've been doing this show for more or less, minus the time I took away. I mean, it's been like 4 years, so
mm,
I'm still I don't know what the timeline is or what's gonna happen in life. You don't know what's gonna happen, but there has to come a point where you learn some things that are actually gonna help you rather than just, well, I got a ton of great guests, the episodes are solid, but there's a lot more that goes into running a business than just, for example, I have some great guests and having great conversations and I'm putting it out there and people are appreciating what I'm doing, it could be a lot better. So
mm,
that's where your perspective and what you're doing helps people like me who's like, okay, do I roll the dice on hiring this
Mhm.
person coming out of college or just this random person trying to get themselves going with liaisoning or whatever? I can kind of like just leave that open ended and you can jump in, and if you have anything to say, I'll let you say it.
Yeah, so I think, running a content business, as you know, is very hard in terms of like the sheer amount of content that you need to put out just to see a level of success is a very large mountain to climb. And so what I've realized is that there's two sides of content creation, and I think it's important to decide what you're optimizing for, right? So there's one side where are you creating content to build a brand or are you creating content to make money? And if you're taking one side versus the other, then there's different actions you need to take in order to do that, right? I've been able to figure out how to cater to both sides, right? And so the way that that looks like is we'll talk a little bit about the brand side. When it comes to brand, that's where you get into the aspect of you need to create large amounts of content to different platforms in order to be seen, in order to be heard, but in order to, build those vanity metrics of being liked, right? And so, in order for you to pump that much content out, you need to spend a lot of hours in the creation phase. And oftentimes, what I see with creators is that they get so burnt out that it ends up just being like a whole, mess. And so, what I think is a better use of your time is if you're building a brand, is to create content once and to let automations do it on the back end. And so, what I mean by automations is I'll give an example for myself, right? So, for me, I write email, right? I write one email a day to my list, and that's my long form content pieces, or it could be a blog article, right? And so what I would do is once of my content is all ready to go, I just automate the content repurposing. And what that means is essentially I take that content, put it through my daily content generator, which is my automation, and it's one of my digital products that I sell. And so, what that daily content generator does is it takes that content piece and it uses AI to basically say, hey, look at this source content, create a Twitter thread for me, create an Instagram post for me, create an Instagram or create a IG reel for me. All these different types of things where I can actually leverage AI to do the human thinking in terms of actually the repurposing part, right? So what it will do is the AI will take that, create the content pieces that you ask for it to create, and then I have the other steps or automation where it actually posts on my behalf, right? So my automation, the daily content generator will take the AI content and it'll actually post to Instagram for me, it will post to Twitter, it'll post to LinkedIn, all these different platforms. But I actually didn't even lift a finger because I set the automations once, have 20% of your time do 80% of the work, right? The 80/20 rule. And so that automation truly is how I'm able to create content at scale by creating content once. So that is the brand side, right? The other side is you want to optimize for money, right? And so I think a lot of people like to think to themselves like, oh, like if I just grow a big following account, then like naturally sales will come. And most creators who are at that phase, they find themselves at that point and they're like, where's the money? Well, the truth is, followers don't pay the bills. And so the way that you can actually really think about this is if you're optimizing for money, you want to optimize for better conversions. And what that looks like is, I have the brand side creating all the content for me. Well, content should do more than just get me a like and a follower, right? Content should be able to push it to the next step in my process, which is joining my email list, right? So all my call to actions for my content is to join my email list, right? We have over at the time of this recording, over 1,800 creators who are on my list. And so I say, hey, if you wish you got this content sooner, then make sure you join my list so that you can be the first one to know about it, right? And so when I'm talking about optimizing for money, people naturally they go to the next phase to join my email list, and that's where I actually go into the selling piece, right? So when I think about selling, a lot of people think to themselves like selling is a bad thing, but I don't think it's a bad thing, right? Selling is just solving solutions or solving for a problem, right? If a person has a problem to me, majority of the time I'm going to say, "Hey, I have a course that can help you do that." why wouldn't you get it if you're telling me you have that problem, right? And so if they join my email list, that's I make it very clear. Yeah, I will be selling, certain products of mine. I need to make money and you have a problem. We can, figure out how to make that relationship work together. But I'm also here to give you insights and value as well, right? So when it comes to my email list, I give you, freebies throughout the, time that you're in my email list. So if you're in my email list for a longer time, then I'll give you some free gifts throughout just to say a way to say thank you. So that's a way to create a better relationship rapport with my audience. But also I am, promoting products of mine. I'm promoting offers. I'm promoting affiliate offers, all those things where I can actually automate the email, sending through automations within my email service provider, right? And so I think when you're optimizing for money, the answer is how can I get people to join my email list so that I can take the conversation offline and continue the sales conversation in email. So there are two sides. I think it's important for you to choose a side that works best for you. And then when you're ready, you can become a leverage creator, I call it, and, be able to do both simultaneously.
So I used to do and go to crazy lengths in order to get engagement and followers. I was in a different place like 6, 7-ish years ago. Had
Hmm.
a blog. This was before the podcast. I would never do some of the stuff I was doing back then. So based on all the things I was reading, they're like, yeah, if you set up a Pinterest account and set up all these pins of your blogs and do all this stuff, join like Telegram reciprocal groups where if you like a whole bunch of people's stuff and you post your thing, they'll like it back and just all this ridiculous stuff that I was doing, and it was just I was focused too much on like the wrong kind of thing. I mean, it was great because it generated a little bit of something, but I didn't really accomplish anything either. I
Mhm.
gained some followers who may I would guess a lot of them probably dropped off anyway, or as soon as they liked or followed, they were like, "Well, I got my follow," and it's just a really horrendous cycle that
Mhm.
I wound up getting into. I had fun. I'm all about learning. I'm very curious. I like to try things. So I
Mhm.
think that's why being a podcast host is a good job for me because every episode I'm like, this person knows stuff. Like, for
Mhm.
example, you know a lot of really good stuff. So I gotta know. And I think that is a good role for me. But basically I, and especially you, since you're the expert, can say you don't have to resort to doing all that kind of stuff to accomplish your goals.
Yeah, I actually, like I mentioned earlier, I'm on the side of doing less than more. And I think that's, again, when you choose the side of like, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for brand or for money, right? If you're I think there's this other layer where like you want to ask yourself like what do you actually like to do? Like I personally, I am not a big person who likes to have meetings in terms of like sales calls, coaching calls, all those things. And I personally really like a clear calendar, right? And so, with that being said, like that kind of crosses off some content that I wouldn't do, right? So that means like TikTok. I'm not going to be spending a ton of time on TikTok or maybe YouTube, right? Even though I'm trying to, but like it's just something that's not consistent for me in terms of it's not the type of content that I like to create, right? I'm someone who likes to write because it's very easy, it's very meta, it's very like simple and I'm able to distribute my content to people who like to read, right? And so like I think it's important to ask yourself if you're going to go down this content creation route, like what is it that you really like to do? If you like to read, maybe you're someone who likes to write. If you like to watch Netflix or YouTube, maybe you're someone who likes to be a YouTuber or like to do video content, those types of things. And then you choose your content style, master that craft, and then you can get onto all the pieces of automating, repurposing, and going to different platforms.
So I totally agree with that because and just taking a piece of what I've learned, it's good to try out different things. If you're not totally sure, it's good to try out different things and figure out, okay, what do I like to do? Because
Mm.
for me, I like to talk and I like to listen. So doing this is great because I'm apparently a very good listener. So
Mhm,
I know when to be quiet and let people talk. And I love feeding off of that. I get good energy just from the interactions that I'm doing. And
mhm,
I'll to your point, some of the stuff people like to go on TikTok and do videos and stuff. I like doing it sometimes, but I have to be in the right mood. Something like
mm.
this, I'm pretty much always in the mood to do it. So it's really up to like what you like to do because the passion is going to come through. Because
Mhm,
I could sit here and talk to you about all the things because it looks like you did a lot of different little jobs leading up to when you decided to be like full-time entrepreneur coach and what you're doing now. And I could talk about that. And I do tend to ask those kind of things on this show because it's interesting, but
mm.
it just doesn't feed into your passion at all. Like just listening to you talk, I don't see much evidence of anything that reflects who you are now. So, I mean, was just to quickly ask, was that on your mind in that time frame? Like, man, I'm just not passionate about what I'm doing at all. I need to just go start my own business. I need to do my own thing.
I think it's important to decide what works for your lifestyle, right? And so I am someone who I like to do a lot of different things. I don't necessarily have the problem of working more. I have the problem of working less, which is a different conversation, right? But I think for me, it's like even when I was a kid, like my mom would take me to, swim lessons, wood shop, Legobotics, all those things. And so I have always done something in addition to my main thing, right? So when I was in school, I had a coaching business. When, I had my 9 to 5, I had my content business. When I had all these things, I was always doing something on the other side, mostly because I got bored, right? And so like it always and this might be a hot topic for some people, but like it always surprised me where like I would meet people and they just like, oh, I just do my 9 to 5. And some people are very satisfied with that and kudos to them. But like that's just not me, right? I will always be doing something, whether it's content creation, whether it's real estate, whether it's something else. Like I think it's important not to pigeonhole yourself into like one thing because you know it's great to be multi-passionate. It's great to allow yourself to learn in different areas, right? And so is content creation all that I do with my time? No. If anything, it maybe takes 20% of my time. I have a life outside of my business, right? And so I think it's important to like know that like your business is not your life, but also whatever you're doing may not be forever, and that's okay.
So I am still 9 to 5, but I've been working remotely for the past 3 years, which is mind blowing. It's been life changing, even though it's not my own business. I'm still working remotely, and it's changed my life immensely, which is a whole other conversation. But I really feel like you have to know like I think there came a point for me where yeah, I had a lot of passion. I've always been passionate about media,
Hmm.
television, ever since I was real little. So I picked the right field, still in that field today, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I think because of some things going on with me and just some obstacles I've had in my life, just things I was born with and whatever, it's like, oh, I can't ever be in front of the camera. I don't sound right. I don't have the right look. So for a lot of years, that kind of thinking was holding me back
Mm,
from doing the kind of thing I'm doing now. And I'm
mm,
learning that, if I wanted to be on camera as on camera talent, maybe that wasn't as far out of reach for me as I might think. I mean,
mm.
it helps if you don't eat a kind bar 30 minutes before you're supposed to do a podcast and get the nuts stuck in your throat, and after all these episodes know better. So that's a lesson to learn right up front there for me. But I really had that holding me back.
Mm,
And I know that for years I was happy just doing that 9 to 5, like, okay, I'm working towards that goal. Like, I still had goals in mind. I still have goals because I don't
mhm,
know where this show is going to take me. I see it starting to take me more and more where I want it to go. It's a long process, but
mhm.
it's taking me more and more where I want it to go. And you really have to be persistent and have a certain level of drive to stick with something that's moving that slowly, I guess. It's been a
Yeah.
few years
Yeah.
of it now, but
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people I've crossed paths with. They're perfectly happy with the 9 to 5, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. But if you do have any kind of passion or really are feeling stuck or whatever it is, and you just have that feeling in your gut that there's more to my existence, there's more to life, then
Mhm.
I'm a full believer in at least trying to act on that, which is what I've been doing. And yeah, I mean, it depends on you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that you say that because like I sometimes like peruse like Reddit, which may be like a rabbit hole, right? But a lot of times, if you've seen the entrepreneurship subreddit or community, you'll see a lot of people ask like, "What business do I start?" Or a lot of mindset things where it's like even like, "I know I want to do this. I know I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know how to get started." Or "What do I do?" All these things. There's kind of like a lot of people just want a roadmap in terms of like how to get started. But I think the big piece that people underestimate is like you don't know what you're signing up for, right? And so this is not to this is not to discourage you from taking that step forward, but a lot of times, I think it's important just to try, right? You don't need to have the full like roadmap in order to take your first step, right? There's this quote, I can't remember what it's from, but it's either it'll be one day or it'll be day one, right? And so like if you're gonna try, like try now, right? The next best day that you have was yesterday, and so the next best one is today. And so like even it's just like a small thing, right? You don't need to have like your next $10,000 month. I don't think that's necessary. Maybe the first thing that you want to do is identify like, okay, what do I like to do? What are the things that I would like to create? Those types of questions, right? And so, it could be a small drip of process, but after so many drips, you'll get a full cup of water, right? And so like you really just want to be able to not necessarily push but just to allow yourself to take the next step, but also like know that this is not the end all be all, right? As I mentioned in our beginning of our conversation, like I had two, maybe three businesses before I landed on content creation. And every single time those businesses didn't work out, I learned something where now, 3, 5 years later, I finally have a business that is profitable, that does pay me, that is self-sufficient. Like, that is purely because I failed so many times in the past, but I knew that failure is just temporary. I always say like if you never give up, you have no other option but to succeed, right? So this is me considering myself succeeding, right? Yes, those failures happen, but I still succeeded beyond them because I kept trying. And if you stop trying, then you are gonna fail because you just chose not to try. And so I think it's important to identify like what can I do today in order to make progress for the next day, and so on and so forth.
And that's so well said. I mean, I look as you're talking, I'm thinking about my path. So back in 2019, I think it was, when I was really starting to plan, okay, what's this show gonna be about? What's the theme? So I had no microphone, no light, no pod match account, no uh podcast server account. I nothing.
Mm,
So I had to go and do my research and had to find out, okay, what's at least a decent mic that I can use, because back in
mhm.
those days, it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be doing this in 2024, but I'm still using that mic today, and
Yeah.
hopefully it still sounds pretty good. I'm still
Yeah.
using the same light above me, and I'm thinking maybe those two tools together might have been somewhere between $100 and $200. I mean,
Mm,
just that's probably a little bit of money for some. I mean, it's not a huge investment, but just setting up, okay, I have a I have podcast hosts. I have, you know, I know what the theme is. I have a name for it. It really just using me as an example. It doesn't cost much or take much to just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. Go on Facebook. I found a lot of guests on Facebook podcast groups and just
mm,
started there without even paying a couple bucks for Podmatch. So it's
mm,
like, if you want to do something, it doesn't really take all, you need tools and you need to do your research, but you can, especially today, you can pretty much get anything ramped up if you're feeling it and you're passionate and you really have the desire to do it. You can do it. So don't
absolutely.
let anything hold you back like, oh, I can't do that, because you can. And I'm an example of it. And I think not only are you an example of it, but you're like an excellent example of, look, I'm going to succeed and I'm going to take my time back too, because time is precious and
Mm,
valuable in life. It's a lot more precious than I think a lot of people think. And as I get older, I'm like, man, time is valuable. So I commend you for figuring out such an amazing model. So,
yeah.
um, I'm just, hey, I'll definitely give you a little more time to talk here. I feel like we covered this post without actually directly addressing it. I mean, basically, just talking about your uh, your goals and just you know basically grinding it out every day. I feel like it's just I'm paraphrasing and para-reading here, reading, so that I can focus on you. But it's everything we're just talking about here. So yeah, just amazing. So I don't know if you want to speak to that anymore or not, but
Yeah. So 2024 goals. I'm glad that you have the I'm glad that you have the blog article up. I actually write that online and just to my audience just to keep myself accountable. So, you know, I've had to identify like what is it that I really want in terms of this year. And so, like I mentioned, my goal is to do less, not to do more. And I'm actually like currently in this phase where I'm like actually like cutting a lot of things out, cutting a lot of activities because they're not optimized for money. And so like for me, like I'm on that side where like I've spent the past 2 years building my brand. Like people like I definitely like get tagged in a lot of different articles because they know me, they see my content, and I've gotten a lot of opportunities from my blog, which has been very helpful. It's actually very nice because, it's kind of like the thing where you spend like so much time building this content business. And I feel like this is the year where things are starting to pay off in terms of opportunities, income, and that type of stuff. And so for me, my goal is to optimize for money, as I mentioned. And so what I mean by that is there's kind of three pillars that I'm focusing on a lot. I'm focusing on collaborations and traffic so I can build my audience even further. I'm also focusing on income, right? So I am of the mindset where I rather focus more on income generating activities more than, brand building activities. And so what I mean by this is like when I even think about like my day-to-day activities, like today, for example, I thought to myself, like, okay, do I want to create content or should I build out an email funnel to sell a product? Well, if my intention this year is to put money first and to actually optimize for money, then it's going to change the activities that I do. So I chose, building an email funnel to sell my product. And so, it's just front loading the activities that are going to optimize for money, but are also going to allow me to really live my life beyond just building a brand on the internet, right? And so when I think about my 2024 goals in terms of in a nutshell, like I want to do 30 podcasts this year. We're doing one right now, right? And so I'm almost at my goal so far this year. And that is to build my audience, but it's also podcasts are great because it's evergreenable, meaning that it's a searchable 24/7, 365 days a year. And the other layer is I want to grow my email list to 10,000 email subscribers. And so I'm doing a lot of activities that leverage strategies to get me there quicker. And so that's, either freebie swaps, bundles, those types of things, right? And then next goal, which I think is an audacious goal, but something that I'm definitely very much optimizing for is $1,000 days. And so what that means is like I want to make $1,000 a day in passive income, and that's what we're gonna do. Whether or not I achieve that goal, like is not the point. The point is figuring out how do I get there? What tools and strategies that I actually need to focus on to optimize for that goal, right? And so if I'm able to do that, then I'm able to actually really allow myself to, you know, travel more, to do other things in my life. And so, I think a lot of people focus on like the metrics that they're hitting. I am really focusing on the habits that are going to help me get there. Because I know if I set these goals, if I set these metric goals, then it's going to challenge my mind to think differently on what are the habits that I need to adopt in order to actually hit those goals. So, that's kind of like my nutshell for 2024 so far.
God, those are amazing goals. And I know I have the same goal of getting on more podcasts, which again, just by doing this for so long, is actually happening pretty organically. So, not to discount having to put in the work, but it's actually starting to pay off all that work I
Yeah.
did do. And so, again, the work, it's important to do work, but it'll pay off in the long run. And that's a lesson I've learned. I'm sure it's a lesson you've learned. And I personally, if I could make $1,000 a day, I could quit my day job. I would be very, very happy with that. So I think that's a good goal. I think that's a realistic goal. Not that you asked me, because I don't actually, I'm not an expert. That's why I'm in the hosting chair. But I think that is a tremendous goal. I think that's an attainable goal. So that's amazing. I love that even though your goal, one of your goals is to do what you're doing pretty passively, I guess, and through automation, you want that to work for you. But
Mhm.
you still have goals and you're still working hard, even though you're trying to do it in a way that's going to bring more balance to your life. So I think you're smarter than most probably. So
Yes, I don't know if it's smarter, but I definitely think it's more strategic and just more thought out. I think a lot of times people don't really like to think, which I want to precursor this, but like when I say think, I mean like really think things through. I know when I say this from the perspective of like, I know I'm someone who used to have a lot of shiny object syndrome, and sometimes I have it now, where I like want to do so many different things, but then I need to actually think through like, what are the things that I'm doing? Does it cater towards my goals? Does it, go through my filter process of no sales calls, no team members? No, I don't want to be a bottleneck. And if I think those things through, then 80% of that shiny object syndrome is pretty much gone. And I'm allowed to actually focus on the strategies that move me forward. So I think it's just like you really need to think through like what is it that you're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, one thing before we get to the end of our time, I don't want to take up your whole day or make this like a 2 hour episode here. I do want to ask you a little bit since we haven't really talked a whole lot. So, your actual client, how are you mentoring them and how are you actually helping them? Because it's easy to just say, well, we're just going to use AI and we're going to automate and boom. But
Mm.
there's more to it than that. How are you helping them to achieve their goals?
Yeah, so this is going back to my mission of like I have two missions in life. One to help you build generational wealth through business. Two, to help you create the systems and strategies so you can actually have the time to enjoy that wealth, right? And so when we think about my offerings, right? So I have three offerings. I have for different areas, but like I mentioned, I don't do coaching anymore, right? So I don't have any one-to-one clients in that aspect or even group clients because that's just not what I like to do, right? But I still want to teach people. And I'm a teacher in the sense of like I like to teach and then, motivation and all that action building should come from the student in my opinion, right? And so the three offerings that I have is, since I serve content creators, there's kind of three areas that people or creators tend to struggle with. And that's one, audience building in terms of, growing your own audience. And that really looks like email list growth. And so we have our audience profits course where I've actually share all the strategies that have taught me how to, add over 1,000 subscribers to my list in less than 90 days without being on social media or without paying for ads, right? And I think a lot of, big gurus focus on that, but I'm like, no, there's an organic free strategy for you to do that. And so I'm helping people, through the students who purchase this course, walking them through they do that. I actually had just someone recently told me like, "Hey, I got over 300 subscribers with less than an hour's worth of work." Like it's working for them because they actually do the work. The other layer is monetization, right? So creators have two options usually when it comes to monetization. It's either promoting their offers or promoting other people's offers. And I know that before I actually had these digital products, I didn't really have an offer. So I would lean in and leverage a lot of affiliate marketing. And so we have our course called Your First $100 as an Affiliate Marketer. It's pretty self explanatory. I'm going to teach you all the strategies that have allowed me to make my first $100 as an affiliate marketer. But these are also the exact same strategies that I've used to make over $15,000 in affiliate marketing, right? And so it's really meant to teach you how to create content that converts into commissions. And so that's a strategy to help you monetize it. The other layer of, being those talk about the two problems of audience building and monetization. The other big problem that I see a lot is burnout in terms of content creation. And so that's where I alluded to earlier of like our daily content generator, where that is literally like my $9. It's $9 because I wanted to make it super accessible and super affordable for people to really kind of heal burnout. Because, like, if you're exhausted with content creation and content repurposing, and honestly, it's not the greatest use of your time, in my opinion. I would rather you focus more on strategy than building content. That's just my personal opinion. And that $9 daily content generator has been our best seller, and it's helping people get their time back, right? Because it's leveraging that 80/20 rule where it's like 20% of my time is going to be spent building this automation so I can do 80% of the work in terms of content creation through many platforms and have it automated for me. And literally like I before I released that $9 daily content generator, like I had that going for at least a year in my own business. And I've just seen how much time it saved me. And, for the long time, like I didn't want to release it, but a lot of my creator friends, they said, please, can you just give it to me? And I was like, okay, fine. And then I saw the success that they had with it, and then I was like, okay, let me make it an offer. And now it's one of our best sellers. So those are the ways that I'm helping people, but my personal products is really mostly through digital products, and that's how I make majority of my money, but that's also the way that I'm able to help people if they want to take the next step beyond my free content.
So you said something really important. I mean, you said a lot of good stuff there, but one thing that really stuck out to me as somebody who is doing a podcast
Mhm,
is you can't really create content just for the sake of making content. You have to have a purpose, you have to have a theme, you have to have like a reason because when just related to being a podcaster, there's some people that are like, well, I have a show. I'm just going to talk about whatever. And
mhm,
I mean, that's cool. I mean, I guess if you're really well known or famous or have a really dynamic personality, which
mhm.
hopefully I'm at least a good host and I'm entertaining, but I'm not exactly like, hey, I'm not like Mr.
Yeah.
Dynamic here. I'm not like, I don't know, you can fill in the blank on who is dynamic, but you gotta have a purpose. You really gotta think, well, no matter what kind of business, just from all the guests I've had, it's
Mhm,
not like people are like, well, I'm Mark Schmidt and I'm just gonna do whatever. I'm selling this today, but tomorrow I'm gonna focus. Like, you have to have a purpose. So
mhm,
I think some of what you just said there, just with content creation, and just whether you should do that or just focus on a strategy. Because I think for me, focusing on my strategy and focusing on my purpose and what the goals are, what I want people to get, that's, in my opinion, how you need to be thinking about your life, your business, whatever the case
mhm,
may be. And I also want to note that me being a curious person I am, I tried doing ads. I've tried affiliate marketing,
mhm.
and I'm so thankful for people like you who do know something about affiliate marketing. Because when I had a blog, I was just, oh, I'm gonna just throw these ads on my blog. People are gonna find it, and boom, I'm gonna make a lot. No, that's terrible. That's not. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you just brought up all that stuff because even with ads, I tried running ads for myself, and it's like, okay, why do people care about my blog or whatever?
Mhm.
You can't just run an ad or whatever and just like, well, that's gonna solve all my problems. And maybe for somebody out there it works that way. I don't know, but didn't work that way for me.
Mhm. No, I understand. The ads hasn't worked out for me either. So that's why I like to use different strategies that are free and that are organic and yeah, that are helpful.
Well, speaking of your strategies and what you have to offer, can you tell everybody how they can get in contact with you or through your automations and how they can learn from you and work with you?
Yeah, so the best way to actually contact me is actually via email. So if you are, I will give you the link for the show notes, but definitely, check out our Content Creators Club. I send out once a week a weekly newsletter just giving you 3 pieces that are going to help you automate your content traffic and income as a content creator. And so that's like my best way to really like engage with me in terms of like if even if you send me a reply via my email, right? Then like it goes directly into my inbox. I respond to all the emails that I get. And so like I love contacting and engaging with people over on my list. So definitely make sure to sign up, and definitely you'll see some definitely great freebies throughout your journey. So the longer that you're in, I'll say the better freebies that you'll get when you join my list.
Hey, nothing better than a freebie or two. So definitely find Tina Lopez and she'll show you how to create content, passive income, all things that I think are really great. You seem to be right on the money as far as what you know about AI and automations. That's also something I played around with and didn't really do it right. But that's another story for another time. I thank you very much for being on Mark My Words and for dealing with my kind bar incident, which I'm going to have to edit out a little bit. Not you, but the pause I had to take. But I thank you very much for being on Mark My Words. And I'm Mark Schmidt, and she was Tina Lopez. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. And we will see you soon with another episode. Bye for now. Thanks again for taking time out of your busy day to listen to Mark My Words. If you would like to connect with me beyond the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt, where I will be talking about entrepreneurship, careers, and anything else that is on my mind. You can also connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at Nimrod1979 and Nimrod79 respectively. This podcast also has a page on Instagram at Mark My Words. And finally, if you want to leave me a voicemail or check out what I'm up to with the podcast, come find me at podpage.com/mark-my-words. Thanks again for listening, and I'll be back with a new episode soon. Bye for now.